In the 1960s and 1970s, American luxury coupes and Grand Touring (GT) cars were the epitome of automotive sophistication. These cars weren't just about speed. They were about style, comfort, and performance, all wrapped up in one sleek, powerful package. They were the vehicles of choice for those who wanted a taste of European refinement, but with that unmistakable American flair. The American GT car had a distinct identity, drawing inspiration from the European models that had already set the stage. Think Ferrari, Jaguar, and Porsche. But American car manufacturers like Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler wanted to create something that combined European engineering with the bold, brash power that defined American muscle cars. They wanted luxury, but they also wanted to maintain that iconic American performance. Cars like the Ford Thunderbird Chevrolet Corvette and the Chrysler Imperial weren't just powerful. They were beautiful, offering sleek lines, high-end materials, and enough muscle to make a statement on the road. These cars had it all: long sweeping hoods, luxurious interiors, and engines that could push you back in your seat. The luxury coupe wasn't just a car, it was an experience. It was about cruising in comfort while enjoying the roar of an engine that spoke volumes. In those days, these cars were symbols of success and freedom. For many, owning a GT car was about more than just getting from point A to point B. It was a reflection of status, a sign that you had arrived. These were cars that could take you on long road trips with the wind in your hair, while offering the luxury of a high-end sedan. The thrill of performance didn't come at the cost of comfort or style. The rise of the American GT car was not just a fleeting trend. It was a cultural moment. The cars embodied a new sense of adventure and sophistication. At the same time, they carried the spirit of the open road, a promise of freedom and excitement that many Americans craved in the post-war era. The appeal was clear. You could have a car that handled like a sports car, but still had the comfort and elegance of a luxury vehicle. It was the perfect blend of two worlds, and it had a dedicated following. Yet, as with many things in life, what rises can often fall. The golden age of the luxury coupe would soon give way to a new era, one where the American GT car's reign was cut short. What caused this shift? What happened to these powerful, elegant machines that once captured the imagination of so many? The answers lie in the changing demands of consumers, shifting market conditions, and the evolution of automotive trends. By the early 1970s, the American luxury coupe was riding high. But then, everything changed. In 1973, the world faced an oil crisis that shook the global economy. Suddenly, gas prices skyrocketed, and drivers were forced to confront the reality that their beloved gas-guzzling vehicles weren't so practical anymore. The days of big, powerful engines seemed numbered, as concerns over fuel efficiency grew. The oil embargo, imposed by the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, caused oil shortages and pushed gas prices to record highs. This was a huge blow to the American car market, where larger, more powerful engines were the standard. The luxury coupes and GT cars, which were known for their V8 engines and hefty fuel consumption, found themselves out of favor in a society suddenly much more conscious of fuel economy. In response to the crisis, consumers began to demand smaller, more efficient cars. The big luxury coupes that once defined American automotive culture were now seen as wasteful and impractical. Cars like the Ford Thunderbird and the Chevrolet Corvette, which had once symbolized American strength and success, were now increasingly viewed as a symbol of excess. The luxury coupe, which was all about power and size, suddenly seemed out of touch with the needs of the average driver. This shift in consumer priorities was further compounded by new government regulations. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was gaining more influence, and stricter emissions standards were being introduced. Cars that had once roared down highways with their powerful engines now had to contend with these new limitations. The American luxury coupes, with their large engines and high emissions, were struggling to keep up. Manufacturers had to make hard choices. Should they focus on maintaining the luxury coupe's signature power and performance? Or should they try to adapt to the changing demands for fuel efficiency and lower emissions? For many, it wasn't an easy decision. The market had been shifting for years, but the oil crisis pushed it over the edge. As a result, many iconic American GT cars were forced to change their designs. The once proud V8 engines were replaced by smaller, more fuel-efficient engines that lacked the raw power the cars were known for. The Ford Thunderbird, for example, went through a series of redesigns throughout the 1970s, progressively becoming smaller and less focused on performance. The Corvette, too, saw a shift toward more fuel-efficient versions in the face of these new challenges. But it wasn't just about engine size. The oil crisis marked the beginning of a shift in automotive design itself. As fuel economy and emission standards became the new priorities, many of the luxury features that defined the GT car, like high-performance engines, heavy chrome trim, and large, sprawling bodies, began to fall out of favor. Consumers wanted more practical, smaller cars that could save them money at the pump and be more environmentally friendly. The once untouchable American luxury coupes and GT cars were now in a fight for survival. Some manufacturers chose to continue making them, but with less focus on the things that made them great. Others, like Chrysler and Ford, began focusing their attention on smaller cars and mass-market models, leaving the luxury coupe in the rearview mirror. This shift marked the end of an era. The American luxury coupe, which had once been a symbol of freedom, performance, and luxury, was now a casualty of economic forces beyond its control. As gas prices soared and regulations tightened, the days of the grand, powerful American GT car were numbered. The oil crisis of the 1970s wasn't the only factor that contributed to the decline of the American luxury coupe. As the economy shifted and consumer priorities evolved, so did the car market itself. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, manufacturers were forced to respond to new demands. The larger, more powerful GT cars and luxury coupes were no longer the cars consumers wanted. The days of the big V8 engines and wide aggressive bodies were being replaced by smaller, more practical vehicles. During this period, the compact car market exploded. With fuel economy and practicality becoming the primary concerns for consumers, American automakers turned their attention to producing smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. The Chevrolet Vega, the Ford Pinto, and the Dodge Omni were all part of this new wave of vehicles that offered better mileage and were easier on the wallet. These cars may not have been glamorous or powerful, but they fit the new needs of drivers who were focused on saving money at the gas station. For many consumers, the luxury coupe was simply no longer an option. While the luxury coupes of the 1960s and early 1970s had been about performance and elegance, the 1980s were about practicality and efficiency. As gas prices continued to fluctuate and the economic climate became less predictable, many drivers began to favor smaller, less expensive cars that didn't require a second mortgage to fuel up. The American GT car manufacturers, once known for their bold designs and impressive performance, had to adapt. The high-performance engines that had once been the hallmark of American muscle cars were no longer as desirable. Consumers were moving away from the flashy and extravagant to embrace the more modest and affordable. Even the iconic Chevrolet Corvette, which had long been the centerpiece of American performance cars, began to change its image. As the 1980s rolled in, the Corvette's design became more conservative. It was still powerful, but the emphasis shifted away from the raw muscle of the 1960s models to a more refined, efficient version that fit better into the new car market. The Corvette wasn't immune to the changes sweeping through the automotive world. The big, bold V8 engines that once defined the Corvette's character became a bit of a relic. As the market continued to evolve, the luxury coupes that had once ruled the American automotive scene began to fade into the background. Cars like the Ford Thunderbird, once a symbol of style and performance, were redesigned with an eye toward affordability rather than luxury. The sleek, powerful machines that had defined American GT cars now seemed outdated, overshadowed by smaller, more efficient cars that promised to meet the needs of a changing world. Another factor in this shift was the rise of Japanese automakers. Brands like Honda, Toyota, and Nissan began offering cars that were not only more affordable, but also known for their reliability and fuel efficiency. These cars started to dominate the market, offering consumers a new kind of value. While American automakers focused on producing larger vehicles with decreasing returns on fuel efficiency, Japanese brands honed in on small, economical cars that were easy to maintain and cheap to drive. For American luxury coupe makers, the competition was tough. The more compact and efficient cars from Japan were beginning to make a real impact on the market, and American automakers had little choice but to follow the trend. The luxury coupe, once synonymous with power and style, was now being sidelined by these smaller, more practical alternatives. The days of the Grand American GT car were coming to an end, as smaller cars with less power became the new normal. While American manufacturers continued to produce high-performance vehicles, the era of the luxury coupe was winding down, replaced by a new kind of car that could offer efficiency and practicality in a way that the old GTS never could.